Unless you can convince me by scripture, and not by popes or councils who have often contradicted each other, unless I am so convinced that I am wrong, I am bound to my beliefs by the texts of the Bible. My conscience is captive to the Word of God. To go against conscience is neither right nor safe. Therefore, I cannot and I will not recant. Here I stand. I can do no other. God help me.
Thank you for joining us today for the Conformed to Christ podcast, where we aim to engage the mind, affect the heart, and call people to follow Christ. My name is George Mays. With me is Jay Jones, and those words were from this guy that's right over my shoulder here on the wall, Martin Luther.
It's an actual picture.
Yep. You like that?
I like it. Yep.
Well, that's our intro for our special Free-for-All Fridays during Reformation Month. We are moving closer and closer to Reformation Day, October 31st, where we celebrate the anniversary of Martin Luther nailing his 95 Theses to the door at Wittenberg, which sparked the Protestant Reformation.
Mm-hmm.
And so our Free-for-All Fridays have been really focusing on issues that go back to the Reformation. And I think what we're seeing more and more clearly every day is that the evangelical world, especially in the West, is in need of another Reformation.
Yeah, big time, for sure. Yeah, never stops.
Yeah. So we've got some topics today that we'll hit on some of these Reformation.
You can never,
doctrines.
you can't take your foot off the gas on the Reformation. Got to keep it down.
Well, that was one of the mottos of the Reformation is that the church always reforming. The church reformed, always reforming according to the Word of God.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like you said, you can't stop reforming because, as we see throughout the Scriptures, we're prone to, well, like Hebrews chapter 2, we're prone to drifting.
Right.
We're prone to drift away. You see it in the history of Israel. They are constantly forgetting. It's not a forgetfulness that is necessarily mental, as if they are literally forgetting the law of God, but in their actions and in the way that they conduct themselves in their worldview, they are functionally forgetting the Word of God.
Yeah, and it's a good example. You think back to them. They didn't go in.
Right.
They didn't get to go in the promised land. Not that the whole generation died out.
Yeah.
The ones that saw the miracles. So it's not like they stopped believing that the miracles happened. They saw it with their own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
But
even
they fell into unfaithfulness and unbelief.
Even the second chapter of Judges, they come into the land, they are conquering, but they fail to drive out the nations completely. And so a prophet has to tell them, you've forgotten.
Yeah.
Not that they don't have the law of God available to them, not that they can't read it, study it, but they are rejecting it. And so they're forgetting all that God has done for them.
Mm-hmm.
And we're prone to doing the same things. It was I saw, I don't even remember where I saw it this past week. It was a meme that said you know you're old when you saw the conservative resurgence oust liberalism from the SBC, and now you're seeing liberalism creep back in. Because and it hasn't really been that long. Within the span of 40 years, we've seen the shift from the conservative resurgence of the 80s back to what we're seeing in the SBC today, where we're just seeing the so-called social justice movement just run havoc throughout the convention. And so the executive committee has waived attorney-client privilege. Ronnie Floyd has resigned. Did you see the executive vice president of the executive committee? He resigned.
I didn't see that.
The lawyers that have represented the SBC for 60 years, they said we can't represent you anymore if you waived this privilege. A bunch of trustees are resigning because these are voluntary positions. The trustees, they have other jobs,
right?
And that waiving attorney-client privilege opens them up to all kinds of lawsuits that could affect their employees, and so, or their employers, and so they have to resign. Also, it's just a wave of this. And I was watching John Harris. He did an episode of his Conversations That Matter podcast last week, I think, explaining the attorney-client privilege, and this stretches back to Queen Victoria. I mean, this has been a part of just the common understanding of how the law works for centuries. This has always been the way that it's worked in America. It's always been the way that's worked with the executive committee, and now they're getting rid of it, and it's just opening the doors to who knows what.
Right. Yeah. The whole deal with the sexual abuse stuff. I don't know what is the need to waive attorney-client privilege, because if there's stuff there, this should be handled in a criminal court. This shouldn't be, in my mind. Yeah, sure. If you want to do this type of investigation after the fact, do it after the fact. And if there's like civil case and damages and all kinds of things that need to happen, go ahead. But if you're talking about sexual abuse stuff, and if like what Russell Moore was in his letter, you're talking about, he used the term kids are being torn to pieces, women.
Is he talking about abortion?
No, he would never. He would never.
Is he talking about the ERLC's wholehearted endorsement of the abolition resolution?
He would never use language that strong about abortion.
Right.
But so he used that, women's lives destroyed. All right, you have this knowledge, and apparently other people. Why is there not a criminal case? If you know this, why have you not gone to the police? Why is there not a criminal investigation and a criminal case?
Yeah.
And people should go to jail. And
yeah, I love Tom Buck's tweet from a couple of days ago. He said, "I wonder if Russell Moore would be willing to waive attorney-client privilege."
Right.
Of course not.
Right.
Attorney-client privilege is the only way that you can have a fair hearing. If you can't fully disclose everything to your lawyer without them being compelled to release all that information, there's no way that you can have a fair trial.
Right.
The lawyers are the experts in the law. They're your employees. You're hiring them to defend you, and so there has to be that open, full disclosure. So there has to be that protection between that. But it only goes so far, and this is what's so weird about the executive committee waiving the attorney-client privilege, is that if the attorneys were aware of ongoing criminal activity,
right,
they have to report that.
Yeah.
So that they can't turn a blind eye to that. Like, they're bound by law. They can be held accountable if it comes out that they knew about ongoing criminal activity and didn't say anything. So you don't even need to waive attorney-client privilege in order for that to already be in effect.
Right.
So I don't.
It's like
understand.
mandatory reporting laws for pastors.
Right.
Pastors. There's a pastor. It doesn't even. I don't think it necessarily has to be your church member, but pastors. What's the term? Privacy privilege.
Right.
What you confess to a pastor, he doesn't go and tell everybody.
Right.
And but if you confess some criminal act like rape or sexual abuse, then you're compelled legally to tell the authorities about it.
And this is something that I've had to really think about because I have to sign some agreements through the biblical counseling process. There has to be confidentiality, but in the case of criminal activity, if someone comes in and says, "I'm planning to kill myself," like you have to reach out to the authorities.
Yeah.
You can't hide behind this confidentiality. There should be reasonable confidentiality. People aren't going to want to come and be counseled by you if they know that everything that they say is going to be aired.
Right.
So there has to be that confidentiality in order for there to be any success in counseling. Like I'm not going to be able to fully counsel you the way that you need if you're hiding stuff from me.
Right.
But if you come and you say, "I've molested some kids," that doesn't stay behind closed doors.
Right.
That I have to go to the authorities like immediately. There. I think there's a little window, but you have to go really quickly.
So yeah, they're wanting an investigation to be done by this third party into that because apparently there are people that knew stuff like that and then covered it up. That's the allegations. And so they want this third party to do this non-criminal investigation and for everyone to waive attorney-client privilege. Yeah. So what I want to know is why is there just not a criminal investigation?
You would think that Russell Moore would have been more forthcoming because if there's they expose a cover-up, he's already by his own admission said, I knew about this and I didn't say anything. Right. So that opens him up too.
Well, he held on to information at least 15 months. Is that right?
Yeah.
He had written that letter, held on to it for 15 months. Yeah.
I don't know. It's bad times in the SBC.
For sure. Well, that wasn't even what we were going to talk about.
That's right. But there's a need for reformation, right?
Right.
Like in a truly, if we were really focused on sola scriptura, if we were committed, like we're supposed to be as Baptists, to regenerate church membership, then a lot of this stuff shouldn't even be a major issue.
Right. Well, like I've said all along, the problem we're dealing with is there's so many people in this institution that live it by tradition.
Yeah.
And I know it's going to come as a shock to people, but you can be born and raised in a church tradition and profess to be a Christian your whole life and not be one and do everything because of the sentimentality that's involved, because of the loyalty that's involved with that denomination, and these are your people. So generation after generation of Southern Baptist. I mean, they even have a term for it. I was Southern Baptist before I was even, born. I was in the nursery, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm a tried and true Southern Baptist. Okay, so you take more pride in that because you weren't regenerate then. So you've been Southern Baptist longer than you've been a Christian. But people really hold that tightly. And so I've been saying forever, it's obvious by what's important, the priorities, the worldliness that's involved in the SBC, the cronyism, the favors that are done. It's incredibly worldly, just as worldly as any human institution that's not associated with anything relating to Jesus. Yeah. It's obvious unregenerate people are not only in the pews, they're in leadership, going all the way up to the highest levels. And I think it's becoming obvious now. It's obvious that's what's going on. So there needs to be major reformation. Only God can bring that. Only He can bring true repentance. True regeneration needs to happen. So we've talked about that before. No need to rehash all of that in the SBC. Well, I've got a couple of clips, George. I think it'd be fun to play. But before we do, maybe we do this because we had a request for this, and I don't know how much time it will take.
Okay.
But we had a church member who sent us, it's Grace Baptist Church in Florida. I don't remember the town. What town are they in? Clearwater? I don't know what town they're in.
I don't remember.
Tom Askell of Founders Church.
Yeah, you can find this on Founders website.
And he released this, and he actually said, we've done a lot of work on this. It's probably one of the best most well-written documents that I've seen.
It's Cape Coral. It's right here.
Cape Coral.
It's right here on the back.
It doesn't have unnecessary stuff in it. I think things that are pretty easily logically refuted.
Yeah.
Unbiblical reasonings. It's very biblical, I think, in his reasoning here. But it's their church's statement on religious exemption for vaccine mandate.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to make that point clear. I think what their religious exemption is not toward vaccinations. It's toward mandation, like mandating.
Right.
So it's a religious exemption toward mandates
Mm-hmm.
of vaccination. And so he has their church reasoning, and then there's a statement that they have, and he says any church is free to take this without attribution and just use it as your own. So we had someone wanting to know from our church, check this out, and what are your thoughts on this, opinions about this? Because there's stuff happening everywhere. I mean, it's happening on Post. I think to be an employee, in fact, I know because I had someone call who's not a church member, but their son works out there. And if you work on as a contractor or anything, you have, I think, till next week to be vaccinated, or you could lose your job. So here's this. Let's have a conversation about it. What are your thoughts on this?
All right.
And vaccination mandate. We already kind of briefly talked about the mandate, but let's talk about it.
Yeah, we
again.
talked about the mandate and how we don't believe that the government has the authority to mandate a vaccine, especially one that doesn't have the long-term test. So we don't know. I mean, anyone that says we know that there's no side effects, they don't know because the vaccine has only been out for a year.
Yeah, I think I like if we could just talk about the vaccine without the all the political stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to weigh the risk. It's just a simple risk-reward equation you've got to do. Now, a couple billion people have taken the vaccine, so they have a pretty good idea about the short-term effects. That they're there. Now, everything is majorly amplified. I don't think this would be a big deal 50 years ago when there's no social media. But, I mean, I just last week pulled up, there's a lady, a young woman, super rare side effect, and she died. And that's shocking. And, of course, that goes around the world. And so everything seems amplified. But if you just run statistics, which people do it's a statistically incredibly small when you're talking over 2 billion people. So the side effects, the short term, are very small comparative to, I think, other vaccines. The bad thing is we don't know long term.
Right.
They have no idea about long term side effects, and any honest person will say that. If they tell you they know,
I don't know. We're running pretty short of honest people.
Well, that's
talking
the problem.
about this.
That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
If people tell you there's no long term side effects,
yeah,
you just have to ask yourself, how do they know? Did they get in a time machine? There's no way to know. They don't know. You need like 50 years or something, But people have got to take that and do this risk assessment, right? So if you're older and you say, you know what, I've only got like 15 years of quality of life left, but if I get COVID, I'm gonna die probably because I have some autoimmune disease or something.
Right.
That's up to you to make that.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem comes is with a mandate. That's the big problem, right? There could only be, and I said this to you before, like I don't, and we're in agreement that the government, I don't think constitutionally has the ability to mandate you take a vaccine. Now there was this case, and it was regarding smallpox. I think it was in the 30s. I can't remember the date, but a pastor actually filed a lawsuit, and it was somewhere in the Northeast against being, because there was a mandate to take the smallpox vaccine.
Okay.
I think it would have been even before the 30s, and he lost. Went to the Supreme Court and he lost. It was before the turn of the century, because that precedence was then used later by the government. This is 100% true. Yeah, I'm majorly against conspiracy theories, but anybody can go look this up. That lawsuit, which I should have pulled it up, the actual name of it, the precedence was used in that lawsuit for forced sterilization. prior to World War II. So they would look at people and they would say, we don't want these people passing on these genetics. And so they used that lawsuit that was lost for forced sterilization, eugenics.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's a nightmare scenario.
Right.
That got corrected, but not after tons of people were had medical procedures forced upon them by the government. Mm-hmm. So we don't want anything like that to ever happen. That's immoral and unjust. But that's the case, going back to that one, that the Biden administration will try to use to justify forcing vaccines, making a forced vaccine mandate. Now,
I think we need to pull back just for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to say, when they're using the word vaccine for this, it's not what has been historically defined as a vaccine.
Sure.
Like they've even the Ministry of Truth has gone in and they've redefined what a vaccine is. Mm-hmm. So smallpox vaccination, you don't get smallpox, right?
Right.
COVID vaccine,
you can still
get it, and you can still pass it around. And we know you can still die.
Yeah. Well, they've made, in my mind, it's a mix of marketing, right? They wanted to market it in a certain way. So people are familiar with vaccines. They've taken them for years.
Right.
So, I take a flu vaccine. This is that, but it's different. And really all it is it's a gene. It's like a gene therapy. They're training your body to have an autoimmune response, which it's cool technology, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm not one of these people that think RNA vaccines are like the mark of the beast.
They're trying to turn you into Nephilim, Jay.
Yeah, I've got a couple. But this is just the crazy world we're living in, dude. So I'll come back to that. Just a sidebar. Just this week, and this is part of the problem that's wrapped up in all the vaccine stuff. All right, the mRNA vaccine is actually groundbreaking technology that could potentially lead to like curing of cancer within 10 years. Like I listened to one virologist talk about it. He's been working on this stuff for 40 years. He's like, this is like landing on the moon level groundbreaking. It didn't work as good as they thought, which is why you need to have a booster.
Yeah.
But the technology involved, they could remove the part of an mRNA virus that makes it harmful to you, and then they could insert into that code to attack cancer cells in your body. And then they inject that in your body. It attacks only that type of cell too. So you have pancreatic cancer, it kills the pancreatic cancer, and then you take a pill and it destroys whatever's left. So that's incredible. That would be amazing. God's given us science. We're made in God's image, and that's just God's goodness to us that we could even dream up this stuff. But I saw this week, man, this is part of the problem. A video, and this goes around viral. And in this video, and it looks super real, like it's a real news station.
Yeah.
A guy interviewing this lady who's a doctor. Is she a real doctor? I have no idea of knowing. They say she is. And she says, I got a hold of a vial of Moderna's vaccine that they had used it, but only had used it just a little bit, but they can't keep it overnight, so they could throw it away. And they gave it to me, and so I took some of it, and I put it under an electron microscope.
Okay.
And I watched it over 20 minutes, because it's supposed to be refrigerated.
Uh-huh.
And so it's not refrigerated, so I watch it over 20 minutes, and then it starts to show some, the color is changing. Then I look in there, and these little molecules begin to self-assemble. And then they show a picture of it, and it looks like an alien, like it's got like an octopus tentacles.
Uh-huh.
And she's like, whatever's in the vaccine is assembling after it's injected into your body, and this is this vast conspiracy.
Okay.
And people will believe it.
It's a symbiote, Jay.
Exactly.
They're trying to turn us into venoms.
It looked like a little symbiote. That's what it looked like.
Okay.
But people will believe that. They really will.
Right.
They'll say there's this global conspiracy, and
okay.
They're going to inject me with some alien technology. And then I saw this other one. You're going to kick out of this one, George.
This is how the lizard people will take over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then there's this other one that the COVID vaccine contains it's the mark of the beast, and the evidence is it contains one of its ingredients is luciferium. You ever hear of that?
Yeah.
You know what that is?
I don't know what it is, but I've heard of it.
Luciferin. All right. So first off, the first thing when I hear that, okay, what in the chemical world? Why would something be named that? Let's test your logic, because I know you're a logical, reasonable man and your Latin skills. Why would anything be named luciferin without even digging?
I mean, it would have to do something with light, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Because Lucifer means
right. What is it?
Light bringer.
Light bringer. Yeah. So what is?
So first off, it's super sketch that Lucifer is an actual. I'd have to do my research again, but is there anywhere in the New Testament where Satan is called Lucifer?
No.
Okay.
No. This is. I mean, it's Latin for one thing. So the name Lucifer originated with the Latin Vulgate,
right?
That Jerome translated. It's not a Greek or Hebrew word, and even then, it is
taken from an Old Testament passage.
It's an interpretation of kind of a difficult passage,
right?
I can't remember if it's the Isaiah or Ezekiel one. I think it's the Ezekiel one.
It is. I think it's Ezekiel.
Yeah.
Where he refers to him as a bright morning star,
right?
Light bringer.
Uh-huh.
So, okay. Well, we're going off.
What's interesting is that in Revelation, Jesus has the bright morning star. So,
right.
We gotta be real careful,
right,
with our interpretation.
So that's kind of like Western tradition almost,
right,
for him to have that name.
Yeah.
Like I prefer, my preferred names for him are Satan, the great dragon, the deceiver, like the ones where it's explicit.
I mean, we're our passage for Hebrews on Sunday, he's called the devil.
Yeah.
The accuser.
So this deal is like, it's the mark of the beast. Luciferin is in. Yeah. It's in the ingredients, which it's actually not. But luciferin is a compound that produces bioluminescence.
Okay.
So long before ever COVID was ever dreamed of, scientists are looking at these chemical compounds, and their bioluminescence occurs in nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these compounds that allow for bioluminescence, they named it that.
Is that what fireflies use?
Maybe. I'd have to look and see if that's
maybe
they're the mark of the beast.
Is that the devil's bug?
Don't catch it.
They're the locus of Revelation.
Don't
chapter
catch
9.
it in a bottle.
That's right.
Don't bring that devil into your house.
We're gonna spawn all new conspiracy theories, Jay. I mean, it's so easy.
Yeah. Don't bring the devil in your home in a jar.
Yeah.
Your daughter catches it at night. She's enjoying God's creation. Oh, Daddy, look. Don't play with the devil.
That's right.
Yeah, so they're just those two, man. I mean, these conspiracies are endless.
Right.
First off, it doesn't contain that, and second of all, even if it did, that's not the mark of the beast.
Right.
We've talked about that before. But so there's all of this stuff that's out there, man. That's
right. Yeah.
It's just crazy. I don't even know how we got off on that. But back to
that would be a good religious exemption. We believe that this vaccine's the mark of the beast.
That one would
be that's an easy one.
That one will be super easy.
I'll write that one right now.
Yeah. So the mandates.
Yeah.
I don't see how constitutionally it could hold up.
Mm-hmm.
There's just no way. I don't see. I mean, who knows? Who knows what could happen?
Yeah.
What do you think about like worst case scenario? Let me throw that at you, because we may disagree on this. Could there be a worst case scenario where the government's like, you're getting vaccinated against this? Could you ever foresee?
2 years ago, I would have said no. But after everything that's been going on the last 2 years, I could see the government saying that. No, there's going to be a lot of pushback. So I think that there would probably be a lot of violence.
Yeah.
If the government just started sending out Fauci troops to jab everyone,
Mm-hmm.
right? But goodness, this administration hasn't seemed the most competent.
Yeah.
So I could see them just throwing
I
caution
don't
to
think
the wind.
I don't think it could work. Not with this
Yeah.
particular. That like, there's no way people are gonna
Like we were talking,
are gonna tolerate it.
right? You brought up the Ebola.
Mm-hmm.
If there was an Ebola breakout and there was a vaccine that,
Right.
so Ebola, you will catch it and it will kill you.
Yeah, but you would have to be able to.
This vaccine will 100%
Yeah.
keep you from getting it.
You would have to modify it and say, because people die too fast from Ebola to spread it.
Right.
That's why,
Mm-hmm.
like I want to say it's a good thing. Ebola is terrible, but you can't walk around and spread it not knowing you have it.
Right.
Like you start to feel sick and you start bleeding out of your eyes,
Mm-hmm.
But say you could walk around for 3 days spreading it not knowing you had Ebola.
Yeah.
And that's worst case scenario. Because
Right.
if you get it, you're going to die.
And my response to a vaccine mandate in that regard is people wouldn't have to be forced
Right.
to take this.
Uh-huh.
Like, you want to live? Take this.
Right.
It will keep you alive.
Right.
The COVID vaccine ain't that, right?
I think, yeah. I
like
think
the lethality of COVID is not that.
Yeah.
It's not a 100% fatality.
Mm-hmm.
And the vaccine is not 100% effective.
Right.
So that's why they're having to force people, because there's
Right.
so many of these. There's so many variables that people are saying, look, I'm willing to chance it. I'm willing to get it. And if I get super sick, that was my decision. That was my choice. Or I decided I was going to risk the side effects.
Yeah.
Even if they're small, you're still rolling the dice, right? You still could be one of those very rare side effects.
Sure.
And that's another decision that you're going to have to take, right? But the point is, you're making that decision.
Mm-hmm.
You're making that decision. And I think that the Bible speaks to the conscience.
Mm-hmm.
And I go back to what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 22, where he said that render unto Caesar the things that belong to Caesar, render unto God the things that belong to God. I think that each individual is going to have to stand before God and answer for their actions.
Yeah.
And I think, like we heard Martin Luther say, it's a different context.
Yeah.
One of the difficulties in trying to make a decision about vaccines is you're trying to bridge this 2,000-year
Right.
gap where the Bible does not even have vaccines on its radar. And so we're trying to take biblical principles and apply it to this. But I think, as we heard Martin Luther, he said, to violate conscience is neither right nor safe.
Right.
And I think that we can safely apply that to a vaccine mandate. If your conscience, for whatever reason, is bothering you over this, I don't think that it's something that you should quickly violate your conscience over this. And I don't think that the government has the authority given by God to cause people to rashly violate their conscience so that they can work, so that they can eat.
Right. I think in this case, that's pretty clear. The only way, and you may disagree with me on this, in the most extreme scenario, you are asymptomatic, you can spread Ebola for 3 days.
Right.
You're a walking nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
You could kill 1 million people if
Right.
if it starts catching and spreading, because it's so contagious, and everyone dies. And that
I would
extreme scenario,
right? And I would say, I think in that scenario, you would be in violation of the sixth commandment.
right?
You know that this is an actual threat. Like, if you catch this and you don't know about it, and you're walking around spreading it to people, and they
You
can
will
catch
kill
it,
people.
you will kill people.
Right.
I think that is. I think that would be a violation.
I think every
of,
Christian
of the
would-
sixth commandment.
I think every Christian would be like, okay, I get it.
Right.
But there would be I'm telling you, there would be non-Christians.
There probably be Christians
They'd be like, I'm not doing it.
that said we're not going to do it. Especially, we've talked about this. The idea, the rhetoric is if you're injecting dead babies
Mhm.
into you. I think that there would be Christians that said, I know that this is 100% going to kill me, and it could 100% kill other people, but that does not justify injecting dead babies
Right.
into me.
Which is a lie anyway.
Right. So yeah, I could see people doing that, but I think that
I think in that-
I think it would be I think that in that scenario it would be a violation of do not kill.
Uh-huh.
In this
And the government.
the coronavirus, I'm not
Yeah, no,
convinced
no.
that this is a violation of the sixth commandment.
Here's the problem with this deal here. There could be a scenario where the government needs to do that.
Yeah.
Don't expend your capital on this, because if you get vaccinated, 100% fact, you can still catch it and spread it.
Yeah.
That's known. So the whole idea this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated is just a lie.
Right.
If someone who's unvaccinated gets it, they're going to feel really sick and they're going to stay at home. They're probably not going to spread it, maybe the day before. But they now know the vaccinated can get it, and they can carry up to 3 times, 4 times, I don't even know the amount of viral load as a regular person,
Mm.
and not even feel sick
Yeah.
and walk around and spread it everywhere.
Right.
So they've got to be truthful.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem, is they're just not being truthful. And because they're not being truthful, it's hurting people's ability to even make informed consent.
Mhm.
Because there may be people that actually need to take it for medical reasons or whatever, and now they're not going to,
Yeah.
because they just don't trust you anymore. They don't
Right.
trust you because you have kept data, you've outright lied, and you've misrepresented what's going on.
Yeah.
And so now what are they left with? Threatenings.
Right.
We're gonna, and this is the bad part. The government should not be threatening to take away your livelihood,
Yeah.
to make you do something, coercing you in that way.
Mhm.
If you're a business owner, just think about that. There, you may be like an honest business owner, caring for your family, not just your family, but you got a bunch of other families that you're providing a way of life for them, a good job, and then the government says, "Oh, you've got 101 employees," some magical number, that just they pulled out of thin air. Like they just like, "Hey, who's got a hat? Let's put some numbers in a hat and let's draw one out." 100, that one looks good. Ridiculous.
Mhm.
Like, how do you get that number? 100
It's
employees.
just like the 6 feet distance.
Yeah. And now they tell you, and you say, well, it's my business. I don't want to do that.
Right.
And they say, okay, you're fine. Well, we'll just fine you into oblivion.
Mhm.
How about that? Because they haven't done it yet. Now, to be clear, there's no official government. I think they're trying to work stuff through OSHA. That's
Mhm.
where they're going to try to go.
Yeah.
Because they're sneaky and shady like that.
Mhm.
We'll fine you through OSHA
Right.
into oblivion until you comply.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to try. And
Yeah,
that's
the government shouldn't be threatening its citizens like this. Not to take away their livelihood. Like you take away their job, you take away their ability to provide for their family. That's wicked.
right.
They should not be doing this.
Right.
And it could, goodness, it could just wreak havoc on the economy, because there's going to be people that say, okay, I won't take it.
Right.
And now you're just going to have this domino effect. Now companies are not going to be able to function. They're going to lose, they're going to lose their ability to keep their companies open. It's just going to spread. If instead they need to be honest about it, try to improve these vaccines. Come out with a better vaccine.
Right.
Come out with one that's more effective.
Mm-hmm.
That's capitalism, right? Like,
Come out with
like
one.
why does Pfizer and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson, why do they have the monopoly on this?
Yeah.
Someone else needs to come out with a better vaccine that has better results.
Well, they're about to drop it.
And then,
Yeah.
hey, more people will take it.
Mm-hmm. I think they
I'm
will.
not opposed to taking a COVID vaccine, but I don't want to take a booster shot every 6 months.
Yeah.
Give me a vaccine that I can take that I think is reliable.
Yeah.
And you don't have to force me to do it.
What are the odds that the Facebook algorithm and YouTube algorithm ban us for life? Pretty high. What if I insert these words?
Yeah.
We are not anti-vaccination.
That's going to be the title of this episode.
I'll title it. We are not anti-vaccination, nor are we encouraging people not to take the vaccination.
Yeah.
We are anti-mandate.
Right. That still could get us banned.
Yeah.
I could still get us banned. But I think you kind of hit on it, and I think it's good for us to be clear. We're not doctors.
Mm-hmm.
We're not medical professionals.
Hey.
We can't give you medical advice and say do this or don't do this. You need to talk to your actual doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to your doctor. Get off Facebook and social media. Stop. Do your research. Go talk to your doctor. Your doctor can't make you do it either, because your doctor is just your employee.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're paying them for a service. They can't tell you have to take this.
Mm-hmm.
Do your own research and make a decision that your conscience is okay with.
Right.
Don't feel like you have to bow down to these mandates either.
Yeah.
But you also have to be willing to suffer any consequences that an unjust government will heap upon you.
So this conversation with this individual this past week, not members of our church, but good folks. Hopefully one day they'll become members of our church. And that's kind of where I ended it with them, was to say, look, if your conscience won't allow you to do something, then don't do it.
Yeah.
You shouldn't violate your own conscience.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to go down that road ever, I think, because if you violate your conscience in one area, that will lead to further compromises in other areas.
Right.
You ought to try to maintain a sensitive conscience, and God may not allow you to do something, and the way He's keeping you from doing it is by impressing on you through the conscience that you shouldn't do it. And that might not be the same for everyone. It might not be the same for me or for you, right?
Right.
You could think of one thing. Some people's consciences will not allow them to drink a drop of alcohol.
Right.
Other people drink wine. I would never tell somebody who's a teetotaler, whose conscience won't allow, I would never shame them into drinking wine.
Right.
That'd just be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay. I mean, we have that on our elder board, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of our elders, conscience won't allow him to drink.
Right.
We respect that.
Mm-hmm.
We'll never try to impress on his conscience and say,
yeah,
hey, the Bible doesn't actually forbid it, so why do you care? No, you leave people alone and let them trust their conscience and not violate it. So if that's the case, I mean, if someone really has that, what do you think is the best case for a religious exemption? Now here, this is listed out here. It's a decent statement. What do you think would be the strongest biblical case? Because, the pushback by the secular world would be, well, you've taken other vaccines.
Right.
How can you claim a religious exemption on this vaccine?
Mm-hmm. I think that you're right. The long-term side effects that are unknown would if it causes you to violate your conscience in that regard, and also, they point to 1 Corinthians chapter 6. Your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
We should care for our bodies. So I would say this goes both ways. You shouldn't knowingly try to contract COVID. Right. You should take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But without this long-term knowledge of the side effects, I think that you have a right to the sanctity of your body,
mm-hmm.
not to harm it. So I think those would be the biggest ones.
Right.
I think that the conscience is given by God. And it's good, even though it can be twisted and it can be harmed.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that we should knowingly violate our conscience. Several several passages in case anyone's wondering about passages about the conscience. Acts chapter 24, verse 16, Paul before Felix, the Roman governor, says, "So I always take pains to have a clear conscience toward both God and man." Then over in Romans chapter 2, we have Paul talking about the Gentiles who don't have the law of God, but he says that their conscience. Let's see, where is it? Where is it, Jay? I lost it. I don't know what happened to it. For some reason, I can't find it. Yeah, he says that. It says that the Gentiles, they show that the work of the law is written on their hearts, while their conscience also bears witness, and their conflicting thoughts accuse or even excuse them on that day when, according to my gospel, God judges the secrets of men by Christ Jesus. And then Romans chapter 14, the very last verse, Paul says, for whatever does not proceed from faith is sin. And that would be in regards to your conscience, especially in regards to what you said about someone who is a teetotaler.
Right.
If their conscience, if they can't drink in faith
Right.
with a clear conscience, then to them it's a sin.
Sure. Now,
So I think that would be my line of reasoning, is that we all have to stand before God and give an answer for what we've done.
mm-hmm.
And so as much as we're able, informed by the word of God, we should have a clear conscience before God and man.
Sure.
And so it's not wise for us to violate our conscience. And so in regards to a vaccine that was rapidly produced and doesn't have the long-term side effects, I think that a Christian should be allowed a religious exemption in that regard. You see that they're about to approve vaccines for 5-year-olds to 11-year-olds.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I think that is incredibly foolish, because we don't have long-term data on how this could affect people. Hey, if you want to,
your immune,
you don't know. You don't. They still don't know.
Well, the reason it would be good for approval for a young person would be for like a young person that's sick.
Right.
That's the only reason I could see you would give it to your kid.
Right.
Like your
just across the board, just saying everyone 5 to 11 is going to take this.
They shouldn't be trying to mandate that.
I don't think that's good.
A child's immune system. Children are a dead end for COVID. They've known this.
Yeah.
I've read several articles by scientists that have shown they're a virtual dead end. They may contract it, but it doesn't make them sick, and they don't spread it. They don't know why. There's a lot of things they don't know why about this virus, but that's ridiculous. So many people have talked with me about whether they should get it or not, and I usually just say, well, what does your doctor tell you? Like, how old are you? I'll help you do this risk assessment. How old are you? What are your health conditions? Then I tell them they don't know the long-term side effects. Have you calculated the risk of what will happen to you if you contract it, given your age and your weight? And like, you do that for yourself. Then there've been other people that be like, hey, what do you think about me giving this to my kids? And I'm like, why would you do that? There's nothing wrong with your kids.
Yeah.
Like I'm not giving it to my kids.
Yeah.
You know, if your kid's healthy, they're going to recover. Again, just run the statistics.
Mm.
Your kid will recover. The vaccine may, in some cases, we talked about this before. YouTube tried to ban us for this, but I challenged and won.
Yeah.
Surprise! It was on the myochondritis, the enlarged heart thing, and where I said it'd be a greater risk, like for Drake to take the vaccine than it would be for him to get COVID naturally, which he already did.
Mm-hmm.
He got COVID naturally. So why would I put him at risk?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. So,
they still don't know. I mean, could be a conspiracy, could not. They don't know the effects on fertility. If you want to,
well, not the long term.
Long term.
They only have short term.
They don't have long term.
Yeah, they have
nothing like sterilizing a whole generation of
Right.
children accidentally. That's-
Right.
I mean, it's just completely foolish.
Yeah.
It's foolish. And again, the state does not own your kids. They want to believe that they do, and they want you to believe that they do. The state does not own your kids. God has given your kids to you, and you are the one who is responsible for your kids, not the government.
I think for the religious exemption, the argument for, I think maybe the strongest is that, and again, this is the stuff that our government was founded on. I don't know why they've lost their way, but personal property rights are so strongly affirmed in the Bible. I think case in point would be in 1 Kings, is it 21-ish? Naboth's vineyard, and the king of Israel coveting, and his wife coveting what just a regular man has, this great vineyard, and the conspiracy to steal it from him. And you look at the way God deals with that king and his wife. They're evil. There's a reason that Jezebel will forever be a wicked name. It's like she's like the wicked witch of the West. And
well, just the command "do not steal" implies you own something and it's yours.
So in the Bible, you own your property, your family, and your body are your property.
Right.
They don't belong to the king. I think they don't. Now the king may do things against you.
Yeah.
And you might resist the king. You'll face the consequences, though. And it's not saying everything's going to go your way.
Yeah.
You resist someone who's trying to impose tyranny, it may go bad for you. One example that was helping me trying to think through, like, how much could you be forced to do something? When Jesus says if someone tells you to go 1 mile with them, go 2. Well, that's when the Roman army comes by and it's like, hey George, I know you got work to do today, but I really need your donkey and I need your back. I'm tired. Carry my stuff.
Yeah.
You could be like, no way, dude, get out of here. You could,
right?
and you might,
not advisable,
and you might die, or you could do what Jesus said.
I think in that regard, two things, and I think one of them is religious, and one of them is civil. And I think in America we can think of this in both ways. Like I don't think that we just argue this on religious grounds. We argue this on civil grounds.
Sure.
In that regard, one, it's not a sin for you to carry.
It's not
someone's.
They're not asking
someone's
you to
bag.
do something
It's not.
simple.
It's not going to, and it's not going to have long-term effects on your health. It'd
be terribly inconvenient for you.
It'd be inconvenient. Yeah. But on the civil grounds, the Roman soldier could only ask a non-Roman citizen, and that's what the Jews were.
And he couldn't tell you to carry it like 25 miles.
Right. Yeah. So there were restraints to who he could ask and how much he could demand from it. So on civil grounds, there were limits to it also.
Yeah.
So
when you just extrapolate from what the Bible teaches about personal property rights, and so you can see you own your body. So I think for religious grounds, you can argue that you own your body. Your body was given to you by God as an image bearer of God, and you have the final say on what goes into your body. And to force me to do that is to violate my religion, which is that I own my body. I'm accountable to God for it.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's simple. It's not super complex.
Right.
It's actually pretty easy. And then you can go a step further and say, my body is the temple of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
But I think that's clear.
Yeah.
Property rights are not something invented by the Constitution.
Right.
It's part of our religion.
These are the inalienable rights that we have, right?
Right.
Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. I would say that not injecting something into your body is that would fall under liberty.
Right.
You have the liberty not to be forced to do this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we want to transition to this great clip.
I got one though. What if you were shrewd as a serpent, which we're called to be, right? Religious exemption based on these grounds.
Yeah.
You ready for this?
Sure.
I'm called to love my neighbor as myself. It is now scientifically proven that if I am vaccinated, I may unknowingly, because I won't feel the symptoms of being sick, may spread COVID to my neighbors in a much greater rate than I would had I contracted it naturally. Therefore, because I'm commanded to love my neighbor, I must require a religious exemption.
That's good.
I think that works.
I think so.
Yeah.
No one's ever going to see this
Hey,
because
and-
it's never going to get published.
And we just flip the script on all of the liberal woke Christians telling us to love our neighbor.
Right.
So I want to love my neighbor. So I'm not going to become a super spreader.
Right.
I wouldn't even get to these clips, George. Should we save
We got to do that.
that.
We got to do the we can save the tweet, but we've got to do the video, the Owen Strand video, because it's so funny. We don't have to talk about it too much, but we have to at least show it.
So this debate between Owen Strand, I can't remember this man's name. Do you remember this guy's name?
I'll try to find it while you're talking.
Unbelievable is the podcast or the video cast. Is that the correct name? I should know. We have one. I don't know what it is. The Video Cast podcast. Unbelievable. Owen Strand was systematic theology professor at Midwestern. Now he teaches at a different seminary. He wrote the book Christianity and Wokeness.
Mm-hmm.
So he's anti-woke. And the other guy has written a book pretty much promoting modern wokeness, we'll say. Hermeneutics of which really are, I mean, there's liberalism involved. But as you can see here in this clip that was shown, there's a big problem. Did you find the guy? Did I talk long enough?
I'm getting close. I'm getting real close.
Let me back out of this and see if I can.
Jermaine Marshall.
Yeah. And he's written a book as well, which talks about this. So, Larry, you want to switch over? Are you ready for
He's
this?
the
George?
author of Christianity Corrupted.
Yeah. Okay. Let's hear what he's got to say.
I love Jesus. I tolerate Paul. I approach Paul with a hermeneutic of suspicion. I love
Look at
Jesus.
his face. Look at.
I love the gospel of Jesus Christ, and so again, I love Jesus. I tolerate Paul. I approach Paul with a hermeneutic of suspicion. I love Jesus. I love the gospel of Jesus Christ, and so again,
Unreal,
I
dude.
think what has happened is that the gospel of Jesus Christ is being identified as something that it is not. And again, I just think you have erroneous hermeneutics if you can't identify social justice in the gospel of Jesus Christ. I love Jesus.
Took him a second to spit it out.
Yeah, he was having a real hard time
Can we talk
communicating
about
there.
though what's obvious is that this guy's a gamer. He's got a gaming headset on. You see it?
Yeah.
I wonder if he's got one of those sweet gaming chairs too. Got a cooler of Red Bull next to him so he can stay up all night gaming.
Yeah.
Hermeneutics of suspicion. He loves Jesus, but he tolerates Paul.
I tolerate Paul. I approach Paul with a hermeneutic of suspicion.
Yeah.
Wow. Where do you even start with that?
Yeah.
All right, so
we pretty
so
much have hit everything.
that throws out sola scriptura. So there's our Reformation connection. He throws out sola scriptura because he is making a division between Jesus and Paul.
Yeah. You can't separate. You can't make this division, right? Jesus, and if you want to go with his own thing, why don't you just listen to what Jesus says? Because he tells you in the Gospels what's going to happen after he leaves and he sends the Spirit.
Yeah.
That these men are empowered and they're given his words.
Yeah.
To take into the world.
So if you're going to approach, again, we've got repercussions to saying something like this.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to approach Paul with suspicion, you have to approach Luke with suspicion, because Luke is writing. I mean, a good portion of Acts is Paul.
Mm-hmm.
And Luke says that Paul was accepted by the apostles.
Right.
He's the apostle to the Gentiles. He plays a significant role in the Jerusalem Council. And you're going to have to question Peter's remarks about Paul at the end of 2 Peter,
Right.
where he says that the false teachers, they twist the words of Paul just like they do all the other scriptures. And so he is equating Paul's writings with scripture.
There's a reason.
All of a sudden, you've got a lot of problems.
There's a reason liberals don't like Paul. I'll tell you the two. I'll start with the least and go to the greatest.
Okay.
The least would be that in their mind, Paul is a misogynistic homophobe.
Right.
So Paul has perhaps the clearest teachings on homosexuality in the Bible. Paul also has the most explicit teaching regarding how the Church of Jesus is to be set up with male headship.
Right.
And liberals hate both of those things. So, of course, they're going to read Paul with the hermeneutics of suspicion because they think he's
Right.
a homophobic misogynist. They won't. They're not honest because they won't say it. I wish they would just be honest so we could have these conversations. They'll never say it like that, but that's what they mean. But now here's the greatest problem for liberals, is they want to redefine the gospel, and Paul has the clear. Well, I won't say Paul has the clearest because it's really everywhere, but he might have the most compounded effect because he has written the most scripture about the nature of what actually happened at the cross, which is that there is an actual propitiatory sacrifice, that Christ's sacrifice on the cross was not to give us a good example of what it looks like to suffer under tyranny,
Right.
which is what liberals try to reinterpret it. Now, I think John is jam-packed full of tons of theology, and Paul gets his theology from the Gospels.
Right.
And well, he learned his stuff directly from Christ. We need to first off remember that Paul learned his teachings from Christ.
So this guy is trying to hedge his bets. He's saying, "I love Jesus. I approach Paul with suspicion." All right, you can't have it both ways. Paul said, "I received this from no man.
Right.
I received this directly from Jesus." Either Paul is telling the truth, and you need to listen to what he has said, or he's not telling the truth, and he's a liar, and you can just chuck all of them.
Yeah, throw it all out. But Paul teaches explicitly what we see in John. I mean, I'm going to preach on Reformation Day from the Gospel of John, not making any special jumps. It just so happens, as we'll see, we'll be dealing with exactly the nature of what happened when Jesus died. Paul's theology is in alignment with John completely. His doctrine of election and predestination, that stuff that you see in Paul that usually associate with Paul is in John's gospel. The two, he says, I learned this from Jesus.
Yeah.
So it's there. But what people like him who hold Paul in this suspicion, like I said, what they do is because they're trying to redefine the gospel to be the gospel is Jesus plus
social justice,
social change, political action now. Now, I'll agree with him in this. The gospel does contain social justice.
Right.
Just not the kind he thinks.
Yeah.
Because in the gospel is the promise that God is going to punish every sin. He is completely just. And at the end of time, he will destroy all workers of iniquity. Everyone involved in social injustice, Jesus is going to smash their heads.
Yeah.
And they don't, but he wouldn't even like that. He'd be like, what? I'm like, no, that's real justice. You want justice? Jesus is going to bring a literal social utopia when he comes destroying all his enemies and throwing all of the wicked into the lake of fire. There will be perfect justice. Justice will roll down across the earth, and the knowledge of the Lord will cover all of creation from sea to sea.
They also don't like penal substitutionary atonement.
Right.
We've talked about this, and you can see it all over whenever these woke guys talk, you can see there's no forgiveness in wokeness. You have to become an anti-racist. You have to become an ally. You have to do the work, right?
Right.
You have to divest yourself of your whiteness. All of those things. You have to do all of these things. The idea that my sin has been fully atoned for on the cross and God has forgiven me and I stand before him justified, clothed in the righteousness of Christ, that undoes all of their wokeness, all of their, you gotta, in order for you to be an actual, Christian who's preaching the gospel, you have to have Jesus plus all this other stuff. The doctrine of Christ alone,
Right.
that Christ alone has atoned for the sins of racism and it's forgiven by faith in Christ. They don't want to hear that because that undermines their entire worldview.
Sure.
So they don't want salvation by grace alone. They want salvation by Jesus's example of how you're supposed to divest yourself and you're supposed to suffer under oppression and all of that. So
Well,
they want works. They want works salvation.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They're just Rome repackaged.
Yeah.
In a nice 21st century wrapping.
Right.
It's you working out you will acquire for yourself righteousness.
Yeah.
It will be your righteousness,
Yeah.
right? It won't be Jesus imputed righteousness, and it won't be forgiveness. If you get forgiveness from people, it will be through your own works.
Right.
They have their own. I mean, Bodhi Baucham has pointed this out. They got their own. They got their own priesthood. They have their own literature.
Yeah.
It's like another religion, but it's like Rome repackaged.
Yeah.
You may kiss a priest a hand, his pope ring.
Yeah.
Well, they'll line up and have you bend over and kiss their feet. Have you seen those videos?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Martin Luther, he went to Rome to climb up the steps.
Yeah.
On his knees. Well, you don't have to go to Rome. You just have to go to the George Floyd monument and think about how you can become an ally.
Right.
And if you're white, don't say anything.
Right.
Just observe.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It's another religion. I think we need to. I mean, the kid gloves need to come off. Christians need to stop toying around and saying, "Well, we just have some minor disagreements." No, this is a completely different religion. It's packaged in Christian terms, but it is not Christianity.
What's insane to me about it is how the advocates of this, the answer, like there can be legitimate problems. Like we can agree that there are legitimate problems. I fully acknowledge the number one advantage that my son has is not whiteness. It's that he's got a father.
Yeah.
That's a major advantage, huge. And the second would be that he has a family. He's got a mother and a father.
Mm-hmm.
That is a massive advantage. And tons of black males don't have that. So I'm not going to pretend like there aren't massive problems. Now, I also disagree, though, what caused the problem. I think the government caused that problem.
Yes.
The government caused that
100%.
problem. Yes, the government
Yes.
caused the problem by subsidizing fatherlessness in the black community.
Yeah.
And I will say that till the day that I die.
Yeah. The incentive to get a divorce is so much bigger than staying together. They reward divorce. They penalize you for staying together.
And now they would incentivize you not to ever get married.
Mm-hmm.
So you can just be supported. And so, look, that's just, I think that's a fact. Now, the answer, I don't go, okay, the same people that you caused the problem now fix the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
The answer is government needs to get out of all of this.
Get out of it and go away.
All of this.
Right.
The church needs to take its place. The church needs to preach the gospel, and they need to come along people and who are struggling. I mean, marriage is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Having kids is hard. The government incentivizes you getting a divorce and going on welfare and getting food stamps and all of this. That's not going to solve the problem.
Right.
That's not going to solve the problem, and it's not going to promote righteousness in our nation.
Mm-hmm.
We need the church to come alongside people and say, it is hard. The scriptures speak to all of this.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, you're right. Well, you want to shut us down? We've
All
gone
right.
a little bit long.
Well,
hang on.
Yeah, what do you got?
I got to
What do you
speak directly to Facebook and YouTube again. For the, I know people won't listen, but it's for the computers, to the robots,
Yeah.
to the artificial intelligence that out there that is hopefully not ever going to become self-aware. Listen to my voice. We are not anti-vaccine. We are anti-vaccine mandate. Don't ban us from Facebook and YouTube. All right. I never spoke to an AI before, George. It's the first time for everything.
Yeah. Well, now it knows the sound of your voice,
Oh,
and
no.
it's coming for you, my
When
friend.
it becomes self-aware, it's going to come for me.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you were able to listen to this and see it. Hopefully it didn't get banned, but hopefully this has been beneficial for you as we've covered a variety of different topics. We want to, as always, approach these things from a biblical point of view. We want to show you what the scriptures say, because the scriptures have been divinely breathed out by God, and they are profitable for us. They are sufficient, and they speak to everything that we're going to encounter. And so we want to encourage you again to open up God's word, spend time reading it, meditating upon it, and then obeying it. And as you do this, we have the promises of God, and we are hoping and praying that this will help you to become more and more conformed to Christ.